Hey everyone, it's 10 Types, and the Pokemon TCG is of course one of many different TCGs, and while it of course is the best, there are other ones that have a lot of really different and unique mechanics, and some that are very common in other TCGs. So obviously the way that Pokemon TCG works is if you have a card like, what's a good example? I guess I'll go with, yeah, sure, we'll go with the Wellspring Mass Ogerpon EX. It's got two attacks here. The first one for one colorless does something, and the second one for colorless does something else, right? And most cards are like that. You got Dragapult first attack for a colorless does 70. The second attack for Fire Psychic does 200, and damage counters on your opponent's bench Pokemon. And then we take a look at another card like, say, Charizard EX, and it has an attack here, which does for 2 fire, does something, it does some damage. And then the ability here is something that just when you play it, it does something. A lot of cards have abilities that do something when you play them, or abilities that do something every turn. However, attacks have different costs to balance them out, but abilities don't. The way you balance out an ability, really the only way you do it, is that if you want a stronger ability versus a weaker ability, you balance it out by stage. Like for example, you have the Kadabra with for Mega Evolution with the ability Psychic Draw. When you play it, you draw 2. When you play the Alakazam, you draw 3. It's objectively stronger, but it's on a higher stage, so it's balanced out that way. Same thing with attacks, right? You got what I don't know, there are attacks that when you evolve, you do more damage. That's very common. But with abilities, ignoring a stage, which there's only 3 different stages. Well, technically there's more in standard. I believe there's only 3. If there's a different stage in standard, tell me. But I believe there's just 3 there. And in like other formats where there's more, they're pretty much the same as pretty much stage ones. But regardless, the different stages are pretty simple balancing form for an ability, unlike attacks, where there's a lot of different things, like, say, Tatsugiri, which is not really balanced. It's, like, really bad, but this is a super difficult to pay attack cost for 3, comparing it to something that's like 3 colorless. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I mean, Wellspring Master Pond is water colorless versus water fire darkness. That's going to be Tuskegee a lot more difficult to power up to actually attack with, but it has higher payoff here. But obviously abilities are the backbone of most decks. If we look at a deck. So abilities and trainers. I'm going to be talking about abilities today, not trainers, because we'll get into it here. But they do have pretty similar effects. Like if we look at Dragapult here, Pheasantipty EX is a card played in the deck which draws you cards, and it's a draw card here, which is the same as Research or Iono. They're also draw cards. And then you have Latias EX, a switching card, just like what's it? Switch, which isn't there aren't any switching cards in this deck outside of Latias, but they do exist, and they are similar to Latias despite being trainers versus Pokemon. Similar idea there. Dusknoir is a card which I guess does have an actual downside here of the fact that now it knocks itself out, so that's like another cost, but it's not like really a cost. I mean, it's a downside, but it's not a cost in the same way that an item, or sorry, that an attack has a literal energy cost there. And then you also have, I guess, in terms of item versus supporters, some do make you discard stuff, but the main thing here is that items you can play as many as you want during your turn. Supporters you can play 1 per turn, but again, the cost isn't there in the same way that it is for Pokemon attack costs. However, there is a card that has changed that, which is Munkidori here. Munkidori, if you know me, I think this card is actually really balanced. I think it's a really well-designed card. I don't think it's too good. I definitely think it's a lot weaker than other people do, because some people think it's like super broken. I think it's pretty fair, and a really cool card. I actually really like it a ton here. With this ability, Adrenabrain, we're ignoring the attack for today. It doesn't really matter. But once during your turn, you can move up to 3 damage counters from one of your Pokemon to one of your opponent's Pokemon. This ability is super powerful, especially on a basic Pokemon here. So there is a cost here, because I actually got a comment that said this is just 3. It's a free knockout on like a Badoo, which is not true, because it's not free. It's like the only ability in the game, or maybe not the only one, but one of the few that's not free in terms of energy, because it costs a Darkness energy. This is similar to other games, like, say, Magic the Gathering. I'm not super familiar with other games. I'm like moderately familiar with Magic. I'm not really familiar with others. I know some have free resources, just like, Pokemon has items and supporters being like energy cost here. This is a card, Lightning Bolt, which is kind of like an item in the Pokemon TCG, except it has a cost here. So then you could have an objectively stronger card that's objectively more expensive to balance it out here. Um, and you have the same idea, Munkidori being more powerful than some other abilities like I don't know. Munkidori honestly doesn't have that many cards very similar to it. We'll talk about one specifically in this video, but it essentially has the same cost, it just worse. So it's not a great example, but ultimately this is, as I said, not something you see. You see a lot of abilities that are free, and so you just play abilities because they're good. They sit on your bench and they are free. This one's not free. You need to attach energy, which is the same energy you want to use to get on your active Pokemon, balancing it out, which isn't a huge issue in Gardevoir EX or in Barney's Grimmsnarl EX. We're not really attaching energy to attack with, right? So it's you're just focusing your energy on your Munkidoris mostly, or your attachment for the turn to Munkidori, but in something like Dragapult, the only way you're getting energy onto your board is going to be attaching it. You can only kind of accelerate one using Neo Upper Energy, as in like get an extra energy per attachment for that one time. But in the rest, you're deciding between Munkidori and Dragapult. That's a legitimate balancing factor, which means that despite it being a nice source of healing and with that healing extra damage, um, it's only doing that if you get the energy on. Obviously, if you have the damage cards on your Pokemon as well. But ultimately, it has a cost here, which is again something we don't really see on other cards, which is really unique. Munkidori is not a brand new card. It came out in 2024, so last year, like I think a year and a half ago or something like that. Was Twilight Masquerade released? Um, yeah, I'll just estimate a year and a half. But well, there are other cards kind of like this, which I do want to talk about, and I also want to talk about if Pokemon will potentially do more things like this in the future. But looking at Twilight Masquerade, Munkidori, if you didn't know, it's part of a trio, the Loyal Three here. Munkidori is the best. There are two more though. You got Pheasantipity and you have Okidogi here. Pheasantipity is bad. Pheasantipity, when someone says Pheasantipity in the Pokemon TCG, they're probably talking about Pheasantipity EX. I did play this card in a video. Well, it was in my deck. I don't remember how much I used it, but ultimately it's a card here that is pretty bad. Its attack is a pretty generic attack. I think it's playable in Gardevoir. I think it's okay in Gardevoir, honestly. But anyways, you flip a coin. Sorry, if it has a Darkness attached, your opponent. No, sorry. You flip a coin if they hit you, and then if heads, you prevent it. It's kind of like Confusion, but it's just a little different. But regardless, you have this ability here. Then Okidogi has, the same thing. They're all Adrena something, and all if they have a Darkness attached, and they're all not Darkness Pokemon. So it's interesting there, contrasting their attack cost and their ability cost here. But regardless, you need a Darkness here, then you get 100 more HP and 100 more damage. However, with both Pheasantipity and Okidogi, their abilities only work and like really do anything if they're in the active. I guess Okidogi, the more HP could matter on the bench. Um, I feel like that's pretty rare to matter, maybe against like Dragapult or something like that. But I mean, it matters. It is useful. Okidogi has seen some play. It's not seen that much play, but it has seen some play. And because of its ability, that's what makes it interesting. And the ability like kind of has a cost, but again, it's not like a normal ability. It's more just like adding to the attack cost. Like you could say this is I know it's weird because you pay this using special energies like Prism Energy, which is both energies at the same time. You could kind of say it's like fighting darkness, and then it does 170 and it has 230 HP, or you could say it's fighting darkness, and again it has it does 170 and it has 230 or something like that, and it's pretty much the same thing. Same thing with Pheasantipity. You could say it's Psychic Colorless, and then it just has the ability, and the abilities the cost isn't part of the ability; it's part of the attack. Again, it will work slightly differently there, but ultimately, it's not. These cards aren't super crazy different. So most cards don't have abilities like this where it says if this Pokemon has any energy attached, which I'm going to actually take a look at because I haven't really looked at what cards have this text on them. I'm looking at Limitless. If you don't know, in the search bar here, you can do advanced search, but you don't have to because advanced search is a little clunky / slow. So we'll say, um, oops, if this Pokemon has any energy attached, I'll just do that, I guess. And then we want it with an ability here. And let's see what we see. Uh-oh, that's loading a lot. Okay, so there's a few cards here. I don't know why this is actually being so slow, but we see Munkidori. Oh, I'm not familiar with all these cards. So this one, if it has any energy attached, takes 30 less. Again, that's a similar idea though. If it's in the active, and most good abilities are abilities that work from the bench, then there is Shuckle. Shuckle is another card like this here that allows you to. It's very similar to Munkidori. In fact, it's seen some play in some wall stall based stacks, maybe control based stacks as well. What is? Oh, that's Megalodios, I guess. No, what is this? Oh, this is just control. I don't know why Latias EX is the Pokemon as like the poster child. That seems kind of silly. I feel like it should definitely be Sudowoodo, Ethan Sudowoodo, and LGM. But anyways, you heal 30 from one of your Pokemon if it has a Grass Energy attached. This is super similar to Munkidori, except it has less HP, a worse attack, probably a worse typing. I don't know if it's actually worse typing, but probably, and a worse ability. It doesn't do the damage. Theoretically, it could be better if you're up against Munkidori and you don't want to put damage on your opponent's Pokemon because then they're going to send it back at you and you remove the healing aspect or something like that. It's pretty rare though. It's pretty much just a worse Munkidori, though it does have, as I said, some use cases. But they're rare, right? But ultimately, it is a very similar card to Munkidori with the same card design of an ability that can work from the bench, best used from the bench here. And it's an ability that has a cost here of energy, which is interesting, allowing for more unique abilities with interactions with your attacker because you're needing to decide between one or the other. Or doing something like, say, with Munkidori, you could attach to Munkidori if you're playing. Like Enzoric EX here, right? You attach to Munkidori, and you use its ability, then you energy switch the energy onto Enzoric EX or something like that, which can be fun. It's more resources, you're still committing into it, but it is pretty interesting here. But you are still using this energy attachment for a turn, which is a limited resource, and a very linear resource unless you have acceleration. But acceleration is still something that you need to, commit to. So it again has an interesting element here. Again, obviously, I'm just the main idea is that it adds more depth to the game. Um, and let's see, are there other cards like this? As I said, didn't prepare. I didn't even know about this Regirock here. Um, there are like these modular attacks, is what I describe, like the Scalvantula, which does damage, then more if it has a certain type of energy, which is like a different attack cost. But again, it's just like a different attack cost, so it's pretty basic there. Oh yeah, there are these cards with free retreat if they have a certain energy attack type attached to them, which is kind of interesting. But these abilities obviously aren't ones being used from the bench. They're being used to get onto the bench and aren't that interesting. You also do have some abilities that give you more, what was I going to say, like more defense. Like you take less damage if you have a certain type of energy or like more energy attached or something, which could be interesting. There is also Kecleon. I suppose this has an interesting ability of involving energy attached to it. If you have basic energy, its type is the same as basic energy attached to it. If you didn't actually know, Kecleon then loses its colorless typing. There was an infinite combo you can do with this card. Well, it's like an infinite combo because you can keep doing it, but it doesn't keep giving you value if you do it forever. But anyways, you can like move energy on and off, switch its type, and then like infinitely shrink and expand your bench. But regardless, Kecleon, like the ability is very much tied to the energy. It's not like the energy isn't a cost for the ability. Like the energy kind of is the ability, if that makes sense. Like the type of the energy is the type of the Pokemon. I definitely say this is very different than Munkidori. This is not a normal ability at all. It is a really cool card, right? It's a fun card. I play this card. I'd highly recommend messing around with it and expand it if you want to have like a weird, wacky card for some weird combo-y stuff. But ultimately, nothing spectacular. And yeah, looking around, most of these seem pretty similar. This one, I guess, kind of meets the same criteria as a Munkidori, where it can work on the bench if it has energy. It heals itself, so how useful is it? Probably not very useful. So overall, I'd love to see abilities like this, though. Like, let's take a look at good abilities in Standard, and see if there are any that could be, balanced out better with the use of these energy cost abilities. So, let's see. Here we go. These are the competitive abilities in Standard. All of them. Competitive is subjective. But ultimately here we see abilities like, what's an interesting one that I think would be useful with an energy cost? This might be a little too good here. I don't think there are really many abilities that are too good. Maybe something like Mammoth which is not too good, but you could put this on a basic Pokemon, but require it to have an energy attached. What this does, every turn you search for a Pokemon, it's a cool little search piece, but it's mostly here to synergize with the attack, which isn't bad. I'm not a hater of Mammoth I don't think it's super good. I mean, I do think it is bad. So by that metric, I'm a bit of a hater. Not like the worst deck in the world, but I mean, look at its tournament placings compared to like compared to Dragon Ball, it doesn't really compare there, unfortunately. But regardless, um, I just thought the attack was rumbling right. Is that a reference there? But anyways, the ability here is cool, but it could be a cool support piece if it was on a basic, but it'd be too good if it was on a basic, so you could balance it out by making it require energy. And I think it would be a really cool card. But tell me down below in the comment section on this card specifically if there's a basic. Obviously, like it's not going to be 340 HP with the attack. We'll just say some quote balanced HP and no attack or something. And it's a card here that has the ability search for a Pokemon if it has a fighting energy attached to it once each turn. Would that be good? Would that be bad? Would that be balanced? Would that be broken? I don't know. I'm really interested in hearing your thoughts on that. I feel like that would be really cool there. Same thing with maybe an ability like Mandibuzz. Mandibuzz would probably be a little broken on a basic, getting to look at your opponent's hand and mess with their board a little. But ultimately, with an energy, it would be cool here, and it is more splashable. Munkidori is ultimately a pretty splashable card theoretically. I've kind of criticized it in terms of its power level for not being super splashable in the fact that you're not going to be consistently getting value out of it. If you play Munkidori in a deck like Dragon Ball, it's not an evolution, so you can pop it down whenever you want. You can play it whenever you want, but you can't get value out of it unless it has the energy attached. So you need to be able to find time to get the energy on. If you added switch these evolutions to basics, but had to have energy on, they are more splashable. As in they're taking up less deck space, they take less time theoretically to get set up, but you are still committing resources to them and potentially slowing down your other things. So you need to decide between different where you're going to allocate your resources overall. I think this would apply to a lot of different abilities. Any card that is pretty much not a. I mean, like if it's an evolution, you can make it a basic, but give it an ability cost essentially here. You could also have ones that are kind of scaling based on their energy attached to them. You could have some that are multiple energies as well. Ultimately, that's going to be pretty expensive / hard to do unless it's meant to pair with something like really clear, like pairing with like Charizard EX or Minus Grimmsnarl EX, if you had, another Minus Pokemon with a good ability, that could only work with Darkness attached, you could have something like that. I don't think it would be super interesting, to be honest. I wouldn't love that design, but ultimately, I think there is really a place for the Pokemon designing their cards in a more similar way to other TCGs to add more depth to their abilities, because abilities are arguably the most interesting thing in the Pokemon TCG. I think they're a lot more interesting compared to the amount of abilities there are in the game, right? There's a good chunk of abilities but if we look at in the standard format, all Pokemon, there are 354 unique cards with abilities versus cards without an ability. There are over 2,000. So yeah, most aren't don't have abilities. And then if we look at competitive cards are definitely the more interesting cards. Competitive cards on this database aren't necessarily like super strong top tier cards, but they're interesting cards. So if we look at has an ability, so if we look at the cards that are competitive, 151 of them are competitive, and 203 are not. So like a little under half are competitive. If we look at cards without an ability, there's 500 competitive ones, and then that's going to mean that there's 1,500 not competitive ones. So there's going to be um, a quarter of the Pokemon without abilities are competitive. So abilities just are really important here. I'd say it even extends to trainers. You could have trainers with some type of energy cost. I've been working on some custom cards, trying to adapt cards from other games, and I've kind of struggled there. Ultimately, it works a lot better on Pokemon with abilities. I think if you had a supporter with an energy cost, like say discarding an energy from your board or requiring an energy on your board, I'm not sure if there are cards like that. I think I can think of off the top of my head. I'm sure there are some things like it, but I feel like it fits abilities pretty well because obviously you want energy on your Pokemon. But anyways, tell me down below in the comment section what your thoughts are on this. If you played other games with an energy or mana or whatever system, like like this where you need it for your abilities, generally to play cards in the first place, then tell me what you think. But I hope you enjoyed. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell, all that good stuff. And as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.